What's up, Divine Ones? Minister Ashley here. So I wanted to show you guys this video. This gentleman here in this video goes into the detail. He's a biblical scholar. He really makes the point why we should research for ourselves instead of just Googling words and going to unreliable resources such as the Strong's Biblical Concordance, their dictionaries, and even trusting and relying on the King James Version of the Bible. Leave your comments down below, any discrepancies that you have found in the Bible, the King James Bible, any discrepancies you have found in the Strong's Biblical Concordance. Feel free to share that information down below. All of that helps everybody, helps people to dive deeper into the Bible, helps people to really discover themselves, really discover the truth if they're really interested. Most people aren't really interested in knowing the truth. They just want to feed their ego. They really just want to fit into the crowd. But for those that are real researchers and really desire the truth, this video is really going to help you dive deeper into your studies and really uncover a lot of those hidden nuggets that are in the text. Really shine light into the darkness, a lot of the mistranslations, the agenda behind the King James Bible. This is part of a series I will be posting here and there to really address some of these issues with church doctrine, with biblical translations, and how people have been misled.
Christians need to understand just how destructive the King James Version and Strong's Concordance and their related, how destructive they really are. My name's Thorsten Moritz. I happen to be a biblical scholar. Now, there's no problem with being an amateur. In most areas of life, every human being is an amateur. But we've got to know our limits. It is kind of heartbreaking when you watch people feel so strongly about what they believe, are so insecure that they attack any scholar just for being a scholar, and then they use amateurish tools to try and make their point. And then the many who may look in and listen to that conversation don't know what to do with that. I will first give you some context to do with the King James Version and Strong's Concordance, and then I will tell you what makes them so very destructive. My main beef with the King James Version isn't even that it's linguistically so inferior, which it certainly is. It uses something called formal equivalence, and there is no language on earth that functions like that. But my main issue is a different one. In those days, in the early 1600s, the King of England was also the head of the church, and the bishops were considered the king's bishops. And consequently, when the king commissioned a new translation, he mandated that translation would reflect that way of being church that they had at the time, that was the major political instrument for controlling the people. The even bigger translation principle than formal equivalence was the king's mandate that the picture of the church resulting from the new translation had to reflect like a mirror the church as it existed in his day. It was a big problem for the king and the bishops and the other church leaders that the New Testament in Greek, the original New Testament, had no room for church offices like the ones they were holding as appointed by the king. What to do? Well, you have to translate in such a way that that problem is fixed. And now you end up with bishops, for instance. The Greek word episkopos, that in Greek in the first century never meant bishop, now means bishop. When Ephesians 4 mentions pastor as one gift, not office, among many, suddenly that gift gets transformed into an office and gets elevated above the other, so now you have a pastor. When Jesus announces to the world that through him the kingdom of God was materializing at the time, that is a problem on two fronts, right? Because the king actually lived in the 1600s, the king who commissioned that translation, so you want to have the kingdom at that time, not in the first century. And secondly, announcing, that's not good enough. We need to turn that into preaching. So every time the New Testament talks about announcing the kingdom of God, many of our translations end up telling us that the kingdom of God is being preached. And preaching is something that those pastors do. How convenient. There are people in the comments who keep telling me the whole time, I see it black and white, it's right there. Are you dumb? Can't you see it? Go back to your milk and cookies. And when these changes couldn't fully be accomplished by quote-unquote translation, you add to that a study Bible that will explain to you what the text means. And what it really means is not what it meant at the time. It means what the church authorities were happy with in the early 1600s. Does it surprise you that members of the original translation committee in the 1600s were promised higher positions in the church hierarchy? Does it surprise you that the bishops wanted to and had to and insisted on approving every aspect of the translation? Does it surprise you that insecure people today, guys mostly in my experience from the comments, who feel the need to submit to powers, love that kind of thing, hang on to it in their insecurity, and then weaponize it against people who have a problem with it? 130 some years ago, an American theologian had the horrible idea of creating a particular kind of concordance. A concordance is a listing of biblical words and where they occur. What he and his committee did was to tag the Hebrew and Greek words used in the Bible, tag those to the English words used in, guess what, the King James Version. So immediately you end up with a deeply biased concordance that is not worth anything. Well, to be fair, a concordance still helps you find those Greek and Hebrew words. But then you have to go and do the work yourself. Now, what people who want to play Greek and Hebrew on, frankly, an amateurish level, and remember, the problem is not being an amateur. The problem is not knowing your limits. What they do is they go to Strong's as their cheat sheet. So when a theologian who knows the languages comes along and says something that they don't like, then they hold up the cheat sheet and basically say, it's right here in black and white. Because all this isn't bad enough, Strong also added a dictionary in 1890. Now, people need to understand that dictionaries may be great for learning a language that you don't know, but they're not good for interpretation. They're actually post-interpretive. You create a dictionary after you've interpreted the text. Now, if the interpretation's already messed up, which we just talked about, how much more is the dictionary going to be messed up? So now we have a messed up Bible translation and a messed up concordance and a messed up dictionary in the hands of amateurs who think they're professionals. Some of those very people are going to say in the comments that I'm arrogant for saying all these things. But who cares if I'm arrogant? I suggest that you are the problem here. Dear King James and Strong's fans, if you don't know what you're doing, why the heck would you teach churches and Christians? For those who are interested in breaking free from this nonsense, have a look at my playlist in the profile. It's called Hermeneutics 101. You don't need to know the word, you don't need to know hermeneutics. The whole playlist is about introducing it to you. See ya.
I have a new book out, The Bible's Hidden Divination and Magic, that just was published recently within the last several days. You can check that out on Amazon if you already have the book. Whether the ebook or the hard copy, please leave a review. All of that helps the analytics and helps people to be able to know that this book is a good book. So yeah, you check that out, like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Also check out the School of Biblical Divination and Magic. I have new content over there, posted every Sunday at 11:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and new videos here every Saturday at 11:11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys, thank you for tuning in.